Me? Is this all right? So it's always nice to be in New York where you're somewhere where you have never been before. I moved to New York 20 years ago, and I think I've been to Long Island City. Is that where we are? I think I've been here twice in 20 years. And I doubt there'll be a third time. I'm so far fairly unimpressed. But anyways, great to be here. So I'm going to take you through a viewpoint on the state of commerce, which is Latin for Amazon. I'll spend about 70 or 80% of my time talking about Amazon, but I'll veer off and talk a little bit about online grocery and some of the things that are happening in the world of commerce. And then hopefully at the end we'll have some time for questions and answers. Okay, so it's sort of the perfect storm of good things in the world of consumer right now, or there's some pent-up demand that we're finally getting the wind at our back. Specifically, disposable consumer income has never been greater. At the same time, there's a culling of the herd, and that is we've had a lot of supply taken out of the system. There's been a lot of death of retail. There's been a lot of stores closed down, mostly because we have this opportunistic infection called Amazon that is taking out the old and the weak. So this has resulted in an incredible bounce in the equity markets of retail companies. The general consensus among the markets, say 24 months ago, was that all retailers except for one were going out of business, and their stock prices reflected that. And when it became apparent that wasn't going to happen, that Macy's wasn't going to go out of business, that Kohl's was going to be around, you saw an incredible spike, and actually most of them have outperformed the marketplace over the last year. Now, the big event was Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods. And this kind of connotes the notion that Amazon has become so powerful that it's created markets that, in my view, are no longer competitive. And my big rant, and the reason I'm spending a lot of time in DC, and kind of my, I don't know, how I'm just giving just so much headache and heartburn to my corporate overlords, is I'm calling for the breakup, or I'm advocating for the breakup of Amazon. And I think there's evidence that Amazon has now put itself in a position where we no longer have competitive markets. And the acquisition of Whole Foods sort of demonstrates this in spades. The value of Kroger's declined by a third between the time Amazon announced the acquisition and when they closed. And keep in mind, Kroger's, the largest pure-play grocer in America, lost a third of its value because Amazon acquired a company 1/12 the size of Kroger's. And what does it mean when any company can lose a third of its value in 30 days with 3 press releases? It means the markets are failing. The key to competitive markets is that no one company has too much control, and we've sort of blown by that. And I'll speak more to that as we move on. So let me make sure I'm synced up. So to give you an example of just how crazy, people know the scale of Amazon, but they don't really know the scale of Amazon. So on one side here, we have the value of some of the most iconic retailers in America, and on the left side, or on the right side, we have Amazon. This is the market capitalization of these firms in June 2017. So let's just forward 12 months later, just 12 months, right? So there's this is a great year for retail, and these iconic retailers increased their market cap from $304 billion to $340 billion. And this was a great year for retail stocks. In the same period, Amazon increased its value from $474 billion to $858 billion. Now, to give you a sense again of the scale, that means in 1 year, Amazon added the value of all these companies. Added. So in 12 months, Amazon added to its market capitalization PVH, Gap, Ralph Lauren, Fast Retailing, Lululemon, Urban Outfitters, Nike, TJX, L Brands, Adidas, American Eagle, and VF. That's what they added. Or they added the entire CPG industry globally. Every CPG product, every company, Unilever, the sun never sets on the empire that is Unilever. P&G, the icon of America. Amazon added the entire CPG industry to its market cap last year. They added the entire luxury industry. What company has ever added the entire luxury industry to its market cap in 1 year? And finally, they added the entire beauty industry. So when we say Amazon's increasing its value, oh my gosh. I mean, this is just staggering, the effects they've had in terms of value creation. They're also controlling most of the traffic online. So this is their traffic, this is everyone else combined. So you have to add up all of these retailers and brands to get to the traffic of Amazon. You also have a situation where they're now controlling $1 and $2 flowing over the internet. So we freaked out when Walmart got to 11% of terrestrial retail and we hauled them in front of Congress in the 90s. Amazon is now basically half of all e-commerce, the most valuable channel in the world that garners the most shareholder value, most excitement, best human capital, best technology, ecosystem, and one company has half. We regulate these guys because they're too powerful. Like, we are not comfortable with cable companies and telcos having so much power, so we regulate them. We have government bodies that step in and oversee their pricing and their content and just kind of keep tabs on them. But wait, we're not worried about this. We don't regulate these guys. We also regulate the cable guys because they're too scary. They're too big. Scary. But again, that doesn't seem to frighten us. And this is, if this setup seems entirely awkward for me, trust your instincts. Okay. So there's a similar kind of aggregation or concentration of power taking place in China, where you have Alibaba and a small number of players kind of growing unfettered and commanding tremendous market share. To give you a sense of the scale of Amazon, all right, no shocker, $1 and $2 e-commerce. We knew they were big in commerce. Did you think of Amazon as a media company, though? And this is the business you're sort of in. Amazon was supposed to do, according to Morgan Stanley, $4.5 billion in media spend this year through Amazon Media Group. I don't think so. I think Amazon, by my calculations, is going to do closer to $12 billion this year. I've revised that number up in the last 2 weeks. What does that mean? Amazon Media Group is going to be twice as big as Instagram this year. So we talk about Facebook, we talk about Instagram. Amazon, the e-commerce company, is now a much bigger media company than Instagram. And if current trends hold, in 5 years, I think it's going to be 3 years, but definitely in 5 years, Amazon's going to be the third largest media company in the world. Who would have thunk it? So their ability to monetize search is unrivaled in the world of retail. Target and Walmart managed to monetize about 1 or 2% of their product searches. Amazon's able to monetize 1 in 6, 16%, which has led to what is going to be one of the biggest media companies in the world. We talk a bit about Prime Day. We now have holidays, right? Christmas was at least wrapped in Jesus, but now we've just said, oh, come on. Holidays are really just an excuse to get consumers to spend more money. And now we're just labeling them, Prime Day or Singles Day. And the fastest growing one, again, is from Amazon. So the question is, how do you compete with Amazon? I keep track pretty closely of what I do every day. I'm pretty into data, and I'm a bit neurotic. So in 2017, I presented to 42 boards. So far, we're about 3/4 of the way through the year, and I've presented to 38, so I'll present to about 50 corporate boards this year. And it's always the same thing. What do you want me to talk about? One thing only. I'll be at Walmart. I was at Walmart last week. I'll be at Samsung next week. Amazon, ? What the fuck do we do? That's effectively the same thing. How do we compete? How do we compete with Amazon? It's the same question over and over. And I'm here to tell you, it's impossible. And I don't think it's a good thing. Now, there are pockets of people counterpunching, and I have a whole section here called counterpunching. In the short term, there are some companies that are grabbing pockets and niches and fighting back and doing pretty well at it. But over the long term, I think it is literally impossible to compete with Amazon. And I'm going to tell you why, and why I think it is a perversion of our society, and why it's really unhealthy for our economy and really unhealthy for our labor markets. It's very uncomfortable in here right now. So In the last 4 years, or in a 4-year period, Amazon added $584 billion, or did $584 billion in business, and the marketplace said rewarded them with an additional $400 billion in market cap to spend on new CapEx, attract new employees, reward their investors. In the same period, Walmart did $2.5 trillion in business, and the markets rewarded it with an incremental $63 billion in market cap. In that same period, Amazon registered $6 billion in profits, yet the marketplace gave it $400 billion in additional market cap. Walmart registered $70 billion in profits, and the marketplace again rewarded it with an incremental $63 billion in market capitalization. And this may seem, okay, that's interesting, but not that strange. But this is the problem. Our economy is not set up for a company that can get to become the most the most valuable company in the world without ever having to achieve meaningful profits. And it sounds not that interesting, but it's actually a pretty unusual and first of its kind dynamic, and it's very bad for us. Now, why is it bad? Because when the most profitable or the most successful company in the world, about to become the most valuable company in the world, never has to achieve meaningful profitability, it means it can reinvest 100 cents on the dollar in the consumer experience. Most of you work for companies where you can only get to reinvest 70 to 90 cents on the dollar back in the consumer experience because you have this thing called a P&L, and you have the P part of the P&L. And your investors have gotten used to the crack cocaine of profits, and if you take the crack pipe away from them, they get very irritable, and they start firing people, or the markets take their stock down. But Amazon has convinced the marketplace to replace profits with vision and growth. And so it consistently gets to reinvest 100 cents on the dollar. Now, what's the equivalent? I'm a boxer, I'm Amazon. You're a boxer, you're every other company in the world. And we're competing, we're fighting against each other. Except I have 100% pure oxygen, and you have somewhere between 70 and 90%. What does that mean? It means I don't have to be a better boxer. I just have to kind of dance around the ring a bit, occasionally strike at you, and guess what? Occasionally, you're going down. If I said to every person in this room, for the next 20 years, you can operate your businesses at break even, you could be remarkably innovative. So the biggest, most valuable company in the world not having to return any profits and therefore not pay any taxes creates this dynamic we've never seen before, where literally no one can compete with them. The analogy I use, and this outs me as like a total old white guy, is I'm really into World War II history. At the end of World War II, the Germans had better tanks, better machine guns, better planes, better officers. We don't like to, winners get to write the history, but their kill ratio was much higher than ours. The morale of their troops was actually much better than the morale of our troops. But we had cut off the supply routes into Europe from North Africa, and the Allies, the good guys, we had 38 gallons of gasoline for every 1 gallon they had. So our strategy was to take our shitty Bradley tanks and surround their much better Panzer tanks, and the instructions to the tank commanders were, harass them, but don't get near them, because they'll kill you, and just force them to drive around, and eventually they're going to run out of gas, because we've cut off all their supplies. So we literally overwhelmed the Germans with gasoline and brute force, because our infrastructure wasn't getting bombed every night. So in the case of Amazon, what you have is a company that shows up to any battle with 38 gallons of gasoline. They can overwhelm the competition with brute force. They don't have to be better because they have the gasoline. They can go into non-core adjacent categories, including media. Amazon is now the second largest spender on original content. They would have been number one if 24 months ago Netflix hadn't heard their footsteps behind them and dramatically increased their spend. So think about that. Original scripted television and e-commerce is now spending more money than NBC or ABC or CBS. Why? Because again, they have all this cheap gasoline. I think the ultimate perversion of our society, where we no longer worship at the altar of character and kindness, but we worship at the altar of innovators and billionaires, is best typified by what I call the circus shit show HQ2. And that is, Amazon has convinced us that we too can detonate a prosperity bomb in our town square by picking them as HQ2. And I'm here to tell you, I think this is a lie, and I think it's an abuse of the Commonwealth. I think they have gamified a process to try and fool mayors and municipalities into giving them funds from school and fire districts to Amazon shareholders with the notion that they too might have HQ too. I think this is a lie. I think all of this is a big, big ruse. Now, why do I think that? Back to my map. I've been on the board of 7 public companies that have gone through a total of 4 headquarter relocations. And while we do this big analysis and the CEO comes in and talks about all the reasons why we need to move our headquarters from X to Y, it always comes down to one thing in retrospect. Always looking back, it was always one thing. Where did the CEO want to spend more time? Where was he the chairman of what country club was he the chairman of? Where did his next wife live? All of a sudden we find out, oh, the CEO had roots in the new city that made sense for us to move to. We forget these are humans running these companies, okay? So I got really lucky. I'm a talented guy, I work pretty hard, but I got super lucky. I came of professional age in the Bay Area in the 90s where there was more wealth created in a 7-year period than had been created in all of Europe since World War II. And I'm now economically secure. And this is how an economically secure person in their 40s thinks. By the way, I'm in my 50s. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I don't do anything I don't want to do. Literally nothing. I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't on the way to LaGuardia where I have a 1 o'clock flight to go home and make it in time to coach my kids' soccer team tonight. I just wouldn't have done it. If this had been out in New Jersey, I wouldn't be here right now. Because I don't have to. Having economic security means you can say no to almost anything. But here's what money can't buy. It can't buy more life. And so you start measuring your life literally in days and weeks. I've got 8 more holidays with my oldest. I've got 10 more with my youngest. I've got 35 maybe more on the planet. So query me this. If you're the wealthiest man in the world, if you're 54 and you're worth $165 billion, which means you have more options than anyone else in the world, which means you can say no to more things in the world, and you are going to have to spend at least 12, maybe 16 weeks a year at the new HQ2, are you going to spend 12 minutes, much less 12 weeks a year in Indianapolis? Seriously, do you think Jeff Bezos is going to get a second home in Columbus, Ohio? More human nature. In most homes with kids, dad's an influencer and mom's the decider in terms of where the kids spend their time. And the Bezos, like a lot of very wealthy families, he gets to take his kids and his family with him on extended business trips. That's an incredible luxury, right? Good for him. Nothing wrong with that. Do you think Mackenzie Bezos, who is tied for one, the wealthiest person in the world, which also means she has the most options in the world, do you think after spending 10 months a year with her kids in rainy Seattle, is going to say, you know what, we should really spend more time in Toronto? The next HQ2 for Amazon will be in Washington, D.C. There's an outside chance it'll be in Miami, because again, see above, living in Seattle 10 months a year. And there's this outside chance it'll be in New York, because they have a second home here. But here's why it'll be in D.C. They have their biggest second home there, and they're spending the most time decorating it. And in addition, no one's going to regulate the guy who throws out the first pitch at the opening game of the 2019 Washington Nationals game, which will be Jeffrey Bezos. No one's going to regulate the local boy. And the only thing standing between Amazon and $1 trillion in market cap and $2 trillion is regulation. The next headquarters is going to be in the DC metro area. This whole process has been a ruse, and it's been an abuse of our Commonwealth. And it's going to be so embarrassing if this afternoon they announce Indianapolis as their second headquarters. This is the other problem with a company that becomes the most valuable company in the world without ever achieving meaningful profitability. Since 2008, Walmart has paid $64 billion in corporate income tax. Amazon has paid 1.4. Think about this. This is despite the fact that last year, in 90 days, Amazon added the entire value of Walmart to its market cap. So we have unwittingly institutionalized a regressive corporate tax structure in the US. What does it mean when the most successful company in the world doesn't pay any taxes? It means every other company that's less successful than Amazon has to pay more taxes. Alexa, is this a good thing? Okay, so Debbie Downer. I'm going to talk about some people landing counterpunches. The empire does strike back. There have been some notable examples of people striking back. The most boring part of retail is about to become the most exciting, and that is grocery. Grocery didn't pass the 1985 test. You could have 2 years ago gone into most grocers, gone to the middle of the store, spun yourself around, looked around and thought, it's 1985. Same bad lighting, same bad brands, same depressed workforce, right? Same car, everything was the same. Like even the registers felt 30 years old. But all of a sudden, the largest consumer market in the world, $700 billion market grocery, is getting very excited, mostly inspired by Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods. We're seeing a lot of interesting things happen around grocery and healthcare. Strange bedfellows, acquisitions, and incredible investment in technology. 2 years ago, when you typed in Kroger e-commerce, the first return was a link to a Wall Street Journal article where the CEO of Kroger said he didn't think e-commerce was going to be important to grocery. That was our largest grocer's view on the world of digital, that it wasn't important. I said a year and a half ago when when Walmart purchased Jet for $3.5 billion that it was going to be the largest write-down in retail history because this was effectively a $3.5 billion hair transplant on a midlife crisis Walmart. And that got a lot of attention, our biggest retail write-down coming. And you know what? I was wrong. And what I failed to consider was that while Jet.com was not worth $3.5 billion, it was worth more than that to Walmart because Walmart got to announce for 4 quarters that their e-commerce growth was up 50% versus 6%. And that added more than $3.5 billion to a $300 billion company. So while it wasn't worth $3.5 billion, it was worth more than that to Walmart, and I missed that. Walmart's actually done a pretty good job of taking back the mic, and they announce things, everything. And they make a lot of acquisitions, quite frankly, I think just probably for the press release. They just acquired a plus-size clothing company. I think Bonobos was a fairly mediocre concept, but they thought, let's buy it, we'll get some talent, and we can put out a press release. They also now put out press releases when they're shutting things down, because they've learned that's how innovators roll. When stuff doesn't work, they pull the plug on it. Traditional companies have this gestalt of let's underpromise and overdeliver. Big tech has figured out that the key to building shareholder value and occupying or dominating the front pages of newspapers and magazines and CNBC such that you don't have to advertise. Have you noticed these guys don't need to advertise? They just don't, because old media is obsessed with them. Anybody here received anything from a drone? How long have we been talking about that? How long has the media been obsessing over how innovative Amazon is? Amazon invites a 95-year-old from CBS to talk about drones. Like, oh my God, they're going to deliver stuff with a drone. That was 7 years ago. Hasn't happened. They file a patent for a warehouse that floats in the sky. Anyone who knows anything about aerodynamics knows that might happen realistically. Never. But they know the media trolls the patent office, and so what do you know? The next day, there's stories about, oh my God, Amazon is just so innovative. They're thinking about a warehouse that floats in the sky. And then I believe the guys at Amazon go, Jesus Christ, what fucking idiots. Let's put in another patent, and this is true. They file a patent for a protection system to protect the floating warehouse against projectiles fired at the floating warehouse. And the media writes about it. Let's announce production targets that we can never meet. Why? Because we're electrifying the world, right? We're an innovator. We can get away with it. So overpromise and underdeliver is really kind of the gestalt of PR and investor relations for big tech, and it works. And the only company that's sort of doing this, sort of, or at least changing, is Walmart. Walmart's trying to grab back the mic and say, okay, even if we don't know it's going to work, let's announce it. Let's tell people we get it. Easiest way to understand a company's strategy is to just look at their website. It's like almost like an X-ray into their strategy. And if you look at Walmart's website, you can't see the store. They immediately talk about their supply chain because they've effectively decided that the biggest thing, the most accretive thing they can do, and I've been working with Walmart for a few years now, I think the most interesting thing in retail is this very boring thing. By the way, it's always the boring stuff that adds shareholder value. It's the boring stuff, logistics, CRM, email. It's always the kind of the boring shit that adds a ton of shareholder value. In retail, the most interesting thing right now, I think, is click and collect. And it's a great move from Walmart because Walmart grocery is actually fantastic. The majority of people here would not consider shopping at Walmart. The majority of us here would be fine with Walmart's grocery. It's actually very strong. Largest organic seller in the world. Fantastic supply chain, really quality products. Their NPS scores on grocery are off the charts. The in-store experience at Walmart, not so great. So what if you could give them this, the grocery, without this, the in-store experience? And that's what click and collect is. So you literally have this elegant, simple decision to take 5,500 well-staffed, well-lit warehouses called Amazon stores and not tax people with the in-store experience, just have them divert 3 or 4 minutes on the way to work or from work, which is about 50% of the US population has a Walmart within 3 or 4 minutes diversion of their drive to and from work, and then let them get this amazing product in the largest consumer category in the world, grocery, without bumming their high by making them come into the store. I think this is just an incredible genius move that will likely add $100 to $200 billion in shareholder value. So this has been the most transformative product in modern business history. It's literally reshuffled trillions of dollars in shareholder value. Huge winners, huge losers. But I think the baton has been handed off. I think the new, most important product in the world is now with us. It's no longer the iPhone. And as a result, it's going to take the host company to the altitude of being the most valuable company in the world. And that's this product. I think this product is the most transformative product of the next 10 or 20 years. And if you have kids at home, and you see, that's Amazon and Apple stock price. 2 years ago, I predicted Amazon would be the first trillion-dollar company. I was wrong. Apple was the first. But when I made the prediction, Amazon had a $270 billion market cap, so nobody got hurt buying Amazon. Everyone was like, you were wrong. And I went, did you buy the stock? Anyway, so catch up here. Does anyone have an Amazon show and kids? Just you and me? So if you want to see the power of Amazon and voice, if you have a show and kids, it is frightening. My kid rolls in, takes off his backpack, and without even thinking, it's like, Amazon shuffle songs from Shawn Mendes. We're sitting at dinner. My oldest will say, Alexa, play Would You Rather. They have gone so far beyond anything, and I do this for a living. My dad cannot figure out a way to put in his hearing aids or to call me. He can't figure out, it's like, well, I can't figure out how to use the phone. But he's totally down with Alexa. He orders Ubers now off of Alexa, but he can't call me, can't figure it out. This phone, Alexa, right? Voice is very intuitive. You know, we've been communicating with computers for 30 years. We've been communicating with the written word for hundreds. We've been communicating with sound and voice for millions of years. It's very intuitive. We've seen just an incredible uptick in voice speakers. Now, talking about Counterpunch, to their credit, Google has really carved out an incredible share. This is, has anyone seen this video? I hate to be the guy playing the same video over stuff. Has anyone seen the video of the Google AI? How many have seen this video? And I'm going to skip through it. Anyways, it's pretty interesting that this AI-driven voice has so many cues and ticks that you literally think you're talking to someone. It gives you a sense for the potential. So some predictions. I do think voice is the most transformative technology of the last decade. And it's always easy to talk about technologies that are going to be huge. Let's talk about technologies that are just stupid, make no sense, do not waste your money. VR, ridiculous. Why? Because one of our modern-day Jesus Christ, Mark Zuckerberg, uttered the following words: VR will unlock new worlds. Oh my God, Jesus Christ said that VR is it, which inspired billions of investment in VR. In my state, Florida, we're about to see one of the biggest flops in the history of tech, Magic Leap. VR is ridiculous because it ignored a very basic human principle, and that is no one is going to put something on their face that is the equivalent of a prophylactic, ensuring they will never have children because no one will get near them. Do you know how stupid you look with VR on your head? So if you're a gamer that's not worried about any social interaction, fine. There's probably a little niche for you. No one's going to spend a ton of money and time so they can feel nauseous and put that shit on their head. There's some limited applications for AR. I can say if I decided all of a sudden I fell in love with Long Island City and I could look at an apartment building and see what's for sale and what it costs, you can see some really interesting things with AR. VR is dead on arrival. Some other technologies have made absolutely no sense. The Internet of Things. There's only one Internet of Thing. It's called your iPhone. And now there's the Alexa. Smart appliances. Your blender doesn't need to be connected to the Internet. I have a pool I can turn on using my iPhone. I did it twice. That's about it, right? And my favorite stupid technology, 3D printing, right? 3D printing was going to change the world, right? Amazing products, fast and cheap. Amazing stuff, fast and cheap. Well, guess what? Europe and the US have an amazing 3D printer called China. The future of business, the future of retail. This is what I think. I'm doing a lot of name dropping because I'm fundamentally an insecure person. I was with the top 200 managers at Nike yesterday, and I think the future of consumer commerce is moving towards what I call a rundle, or that the winners are going to form something called a rundle, or what I've named a rundle, which is a recurring revenue bundle. So this is the ultimate recurring revenue bundle. Everything from movies to getting your paper towels in 48 hours. I think the company that's able to enter into a monogamous relationship, I think everything comes down to biology and sex. I think it pretty much shapes everything we do until we're 50 or 60, right? Oh wait, maybe this will make me look 45 again. Right? I'll spend $1,100 on something that costs 180 bucks, right? I buy this because it's the most elegant way of saying, I dwell in a city, I can afford to spend 1,100 bucks for something that costs 300 to assemble. I'm a good storyteller, and I'm part of the innovation class. Have sex with me. This is what this is saying. Just as paying for dinner with a Discover card or carrying an Android phone says, do not have sex with me, the iPhone is the most elegant way to communicate that you have good genes and your offspring are less prone to infection than someone who carries an Android device. You can laugh, I believe this shit. The ultimate bundle is Prime. And Amazon decided they wanted out of dating. Retail and most commerce is dating. You're trying to reinvent the relationship. The consumer is always looking for a bigger, better deal. But software and recurring revenue relationships say, okay, look, we trust each other. You're going to pay me 99 bucks a year, and you're going to stop looking at other dudes and other women, and we're going to build a partnership. And it's a much better way. Quite frankly, the way you build most economic value is in monogamous relationships. Households that build a ton of economic value usually have people in them who have committed to each other. Because being single, quite frankly, is really expensive. I'm not even talking about spending stupid money on clothes and stupid cars and stupid trips and Equinox memberships, but going out and finding the confidence to meet other people usually involves alcohol, which is an expense the next day at work. You're spending a ton of time and energy, right? You're focused on other things other than building economic security for your family. It's the same in business. When you're in the business of reinventing the relationship and your consumers are constantly checking out other dudes and other women at the bar, the marketplace values it a multiple of profits. Whereas when you can convince your consumers to move into a monogamous relationship with you and pay you like a software company or a recurring revenue syndicated research company, they value your company at a multiple of revenues because they know your household's going to build more economic value because you can focus on the product as opposed to spending so much money on marketing, reinventing the relationship, and always looking good and always having the right car and always drinking at the right place. So I think we're moving. If you look at the companies that are adding a lot of value, most of them have this recurring revenue attribute. Right? Whether it's Spotify or even the New York Times trying to get you to commit to monogamy with them in terms of their digital product. Now, some have worked, some haven't, but you see examples of this everywhere. So even Instacart could technically be a recurring revenue bundle described as home delivery. This is one of my favorite examples. Is anyone a Restoration Hardware member? That's it? Not even you? Drew? Okay, so Restoration Hardware has said, all right, we're sick of trying to compete with you with, West Elm. We want to enter into a monogamous relationship, so pay us $100 or $150 a year, which may not sound like a lot, but the thing is, time goes faster than people think. And so if they can get 1.5 million people at $150, that's $225 million in free cash flow that they can depend on every year, and they give people 20% off, who probably would be the same people who would wait till stuff was on sale anyway. So there's some argument whether they're really losing anything other than $250 million free cash flow, repeatable cash flow. What percentage of transactions do you think go through the Restoration Hardware member program? What percentage of this person's relationships are monogamous? What would you guess? Just give me a damn number. 5. Anyone else? You thought it was going to be higher? What did you say? 50? It's 93%. So if you're one of the people in Restoration Hardware dating that doesn't have this card, you're a sucker. 93% is going through this card right now, transaction volume. And by the way, the stock's tripled in the last 2 years. Now, has the revenue tripled? No. But the marketplace says, oh my gosh, they've convinced everyone to enter into a monogamous relationship, which means they're going to have an easier time holding on to those people. There's barriers of exit, and they've convinced consumers to give up dating and enter into this relationship with Restoration Hardware. Retail has to convince consumers that convenience doesn't necessarily mean speed. Amazon has said, it convinced the world that convenience equals speed. But the reality is, for most of America, getting a yellow sticky saying, we were here and you weren't home, is not convenient, no matter how fast the sticky gets there. Most homes have a real threat of porch piracy. Many homes have working mothers in single-family homes or dual income working families, or don't have a doorman. So getting you your stuff easily is really the convenience, not speed. So again, I think that circles back to the power of click and collect. This is an example of other recurring revenue bundles. You enter into a relationship basically with these guys around a series of products. The other example is I'm going to Paris next week. I'll fly Air France, which is an inferior airline, but I'll put up with it because I've entered into this fairly monogamous relationship with SkyTeam, because I fly Delta, and for some reason, when you travel a lot, you become obsessed with your status, right? I'm not sure if I'd rather be given tenure or get Delta Diamond for the rest of my life. I don't know. Recognition from my colleagues and lifetime employment, or free peanuts. Who else is just obsessed with their airline status? I'll do the stupidest shit. I'm flying through Charlotte tonight because I want another 1,800 miles on Delta. But they've band together to create these monogamous relationships. No, Scott, don't fly any other airline. We're coordinating with what most people would think is a competitor, other airlines, but we're creating these recurring revenue bundles. I think there's a finite number of brands that have the authority and the capital to potentially create a bundle. And a bundle is not only them going into different product categories, it's them serving as the lead for other brands. So I can see Emirates saying, we're going to manage your entire travel. If you're an affluent global consumer of travel, we're just going to manage all your travel. We're going to tell you what hotel you're staying at. We're going to make sure it's a great price. We're going to manage all of your flights. We're going to manage all of your vacations, because we have a sense, using AI in your purchase history, and the purchasing power we have, because we're going to start to take all the global affluent out of the bar and push them into a relationship with us. And we're going to just, you text them, okay, I'm heading to Boston tonight. I'm heading to Florida later in the night. I'm heading to Miami on Saturday, and I'm heading to Paris next week. And they just handle everything at a weight class that I aspire to or I can afford. And they have so much purchasing power that they can offer a better experience. And maybe I pay, I don't know, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year. But I have the confidence they'll deliver it. Right? The divorce rate in the US is 50%. The divorce rate for Amazon Prime is somewhere between 2 and 3%, meaning 97% every year say, I'm going to stay in this relationship. So, as you can probably tell, I said I was at Nike yesterday. I can imagine, I'm at a point in my life where I'm an aging athlete, I'm having trouble doing impact sports, so I'm constantly at the chiropractor, I'm constantly talking to my orthopod. I would much rather go to a Nike clinic. I have a lot of faith in Nike to figure out how I maintain some semblance of athleticism in my life, and I would trust them in a healthcare context more than these no-name healthcare institutions I go to. I'm an atheist. I think this is it. And I think a lot about end of life, and I know how depressing that sounds, but it's actually quite motivating for me. I think a lot about what I want to accomplish while I'm here. But I am totally committed to checking in when I realize it's the end to the Mandarin Oriental wing at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. I don't think there's any reason why these great retail brands can't get more involved in some sort of bundle with healthcare. I think that's where the world is headed. Another kind of trend, Riddlin Retail, all these pop-ups. My favorite is the Museum of, is it called Froze or Rose Mansion? There's a museum of pizza opening just 50 meters from our office in New York. Now, the key to these things, I've been to most of them, I don't think they're very good. The key to them is scarcity. And the key to the scarcity is that they figured out a way to not enter into long-term leases. So just as WeWork has made leasing office space more flexible, I think we're going to see a lot more flexibility around retail and a lot of pop-up concepts. And scarcity is a really key concept now in the world of retail. Sniper retail, another concept. I apologize, I'm going a little bit fast because I took too long. Sniper retail is an interesting concept where you pick a category with a fat and happy incumbent and go after a very specific product category, go very deep, kind of farm to table, offer a better experience at a lower price. We're seeing quite a bit of that. The example, best example, Dollar Shave Club. I think Warby Parker does a fantastic job. The world no longer in retail belongs to the big, it belongs to the fast. We correlate a lot of data with year-on-year revenue growth, and we thought, okay, is it e-commerce? E-commerce aptitude correlates to growth? No. Sears actually has great e-commerce. JCPenney's has really strong e-commerce. Hermes has terrible e-commerce. One of those companies is thriving, the other two are going out of business. So there's not a correlation there. The only correlation we could find is in what we refer to as supply chain agility. And that is a retailer's ability to come up from concept to shelf with more products and then move the products out, creating a sense of urgency such that the consumer just doesn't wait till the thing goes on sale, but has the feeling it's here and it's going to be gone soon. And is always checking the Instagram page and always checking the store and the windows because there's constantly a sense of new. Supply chain agility, increasing the number of turns, really is, as far as I can tell, kind of the gangster move that correlates to retail growth in the world of commerce. So fast fashion has actually taken more money out of the retail ecosystem than Amazon. It also creates tremendous urgency and viscosity across your marketing. So on the right-hand side, we have guys who aren't turning their inventory that fast and their subsequent views on Instagram. And then on the left-hand side, we have the fast fashion guys and their views on Instagram. And when people get the sense the product is coming and going, they're much more inclined to engage with you online because the sense of new and that sense of scarcity creates more user engagement. So not only do you have more turns and more sales in store, you have much greater pickup and engagement at the top of the funnel because people think they're going to find something new and different on your social platforms. So on the left-hand side, we have Zara. You see the email open rates and the percentage of emails that have a discount And then we have on the right-hand side Old Navy that doesn't have nearly as agile a supply chain, and as you can see, much greater percentage of promotion and much lower open rate. So the world really does belong to the fast. And I think every company has to decide, how do we take our agility metrics, whether it's turns of inventory or how often we change our homepage, and say, how do we increase it 50% in the next 24 months? And I think you'll see an uptick in margins and in sales. Some companies doing an interesting job of this. Oh, this is Everlane, creates a decent sense of scarcity. Gemmies Monday drops. You get the sense you're a member, and it creates a sense of urgency around a specific time of the week. I think they do a nice job. Even Nike is doing a pretty good job of this. There's some of their stores, owned and operated stores, they've committed to having 20% new product every 2 weeks. So there's a reason to go back in and see what they've done that's new and interesting. Whereas when you think of a Nike or Adidas store, you generally think, if I went in every 6 months, I'd largely see the same thing. But they're trying to create a series of boutiques that create a sense of newness and fresh. It doesn't always have to be original product. So the Kylie Jenner lip kit spikes on Instagram, and Google, L'Oreal, Nux, Estee Lauder notice this spike, and they begin renaming their products and remerchandising and repackaging and renaming them to create a sense of urgency. And then the ultimate arbiter of what's cool, Google Organic Search, starts returning their stuff faster. So I think you can be creative and nimble and somewhat scrappy around what it means to create a sense of new with your products. It doesn't have to be all original product. Now, if you don't have assortment and a sense of scarcity or unique creation or truly differentiated product, it's just going to get harder and harder, because the thing the internet has done with its transparency is it's created this giant sucking sound downward for pricing. So even in an economy where we're starting to talk about the I word for the first time in 25 years, inflation, we have deflation in retail. Offline prices are averaging negative 3% a year, which is staggering. I'm sorry, online. And then offline prices are actually coming down. And this is in an incredibly strong economy. So if you don't create a sense of new or differentiation, it is really just a downward spiral around pricing. So some predictions. Supply chain agility and scarcity value are the axes that are critical to creation in discretionary categories. Fast fashion will disrupt other categories. You'll see it move to beauty. E-commerce profitability will be directly correlated with your differentiation and your service or value proposition versus the cheapest price. Just getting on that horse is just a trip to the glue factory. So what else? I think the next big market for retail and commerce is in the next market that's ripe for disruption. So how do you know if you're about to be disrupted? There's a fairly simple disruption index, and that is you look at the underlying price increases of your core products over a certain amount of time, and then you look at the corresponding increase in inflation. And if you aren't adding a lot of value and you've increased your prices faster than inflation, you're effectively sticking your chin out. So remember your cable bill 10 years ago was about $80. Now it's about 200 or 150. And okay, you have the Food Channel 3 and 4, you have ESPN Classic, but it really hasn't changed much. You don't look at cable TV and go, oh my God, the innovation just blows me away. But the pricing has gone up. Commercials, media has consistently outpaced inflation. Commercials have gotten more expensive every year, despite the fact they're reaching fewer people every year. They stuck their chin out. And who was there with fists of stone? Google and Facebook. The auto industry has not been disrupted. Some people might argue Tesla, it doesn't even have a 1% market share. Why? Because a Mercedes S-Class costs less on an inflation-adjusted basis than it did 30 years ago, and the car is far superior. So you'd argue the auto industry is not ripe for disruption. So the question is, what are the next industries that are ripe to be disrupted? And there's two. And I mentioned one, healthcare, we'll talk about that. Consistently raise prices faster than inflation. Does anyone know the other one? Hands down, education. So I teach 170 kids on Monday nights. School charges them $6,000 a piece. It's about $1 million for 12 nights with me on a stage like this for 2 hours and 40 minutes. So that's $90,000 every time I speak. So I'm good, I'm not that good. That's not sustainable. And my guess is the margins on that are about 97% because they pay me about 3%. So that's not sustainable. Someone is going to come along and just kick the crap out of education. I can't wait. Some of my colleagues are just so mediocre. So the next industry ripe for disruption is healthcare, hands down. And I think this is where a lot of retail is going to head, and it's already starting to happen. You're seeing kind of this retail mentality head into healthcare. By the way, I don't know if anyone's been to urgent care. I think it's the best retail experience in commerce right now. You know, my kid gets an earache, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna, you know, you freak out. Take him to the emergency room. Emergency room is wait. You know, is the kid dying? No. Okay, wait here for 4 hours. And I don't know what we do, but whatever we do, it's going to cost you somewhere between $1,300 and $3,500. And we're not going to tell you what anything costs. And we're going to act like we're gods. And we're going to just let you sit there. We're going to come and check and then leave for like 45 minutes. I mean, you get much better service at a Best Buy. Much better service at a Best Buy. And I think that's where Best Buy is headed. I think Best Buy and a lot of these companies are going to move into healthcare because, all right, you get shot, you need to go to the emergency room. But for most other stuff, I think retail can bring a lot of value to it. Where am I at time? 5 minutes? Thanks very much. So I wrote a book, and it's about Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. But if I were to write a sequel and it was called The One, it would be about Amazon. I think Amazon is actually beating up on the other three. What's the most innovative hardware company in the world? Apple. Remember Apple's most recent product release? Let me summarize it. You won't believe what we've done. We have a better phone. Crickets. 2 weeks later, Amazon announces all those interesting voice products and speakers, and it got a lot more attention. Amazon is now the most innovative hardware company in the world. Look where they're bumping up against Facebook and Google in media. And you now have the fastest growing media company in the world. It's not Facebook or Google, it's Amazon. In sum, we've just never seen a company like this firing on all 12,000 cylinders. I do a series of predictions every year, and I change the rank in my confidence in the predictions. So, for example, I predicted Poland was going to the finals of the World Cup. They got knocked out in the first round. That's the number 10. I think number 2, is this? Oh, this is my most confident prediction. We talked about this, DC. My prediction that I have the second most confidence in is who will be Time's 2018 Man of the Year. I think it's this guy. So if you buy into the notion that these companies, and specifically Amazon, have gotten too strong, the question is, well, what do we do about it, right? And I think even before we talk about legislation or antitrust breaking them up, I think we're going to have to get rid of the macho test. There's a certain level of macho. I recently came out of the closet as someone who's an advocate of breaking Amazon up, and I didn't want to because I like to think of myself as an entrepreneur and someone who's embraced capitalism, which means I want to compete. No, don't break them up. Yeah, they're powerful, but we're going to compete with them. There's sort of this macho in it, isn't there? And that if you call for the breakup of these guys or some sort of regulation, you're a socialist, or worse, you're European. So because I've been calling for the breakup of these guys, I'm one of the 89% of Manhattanites that voted for Hillary, and I was totally flummoxed by the results, and I thought, I got to get out of my bubble. And the way I touch red states is every Thursday I go on Fox. That's how I try and touch red states. And I really like them. They're really nice to me. They call me their least hated liberal. But they introduce me as a socialist because I've called for the breakup of big tech. This is seriously, I think we have sound. This is how they introduce me on Fox. We don't have sound. This is them 4 times saying nice things about me and then saying, despite his socialist views. So we're going to have to get rid of this socialist notion. America has a proud history of moving in on companies when they become so powerful they're bad for our economy. We did it with Standard Oil. We did it with the railroads. In 1999, the DOJ moved in on Microsoft and said, if you don't stop killing small companies like you did with Netscape, we're going to break you up. If the DOJ hadn't moved in on Microsoft in 1999, would the object of every innovator's affection, Google, be here? You don't think Microsoft would have used its bundling and economic power to ensure no phone, no computer had Google pre-installed on it? If there was an antitrust action in 1999, we'd all be saying, I don't know, Bing it. Okay, so I am almost out of time here. I think the answer is to break these guys up. I want you to do what Darth Vader urged his son to do. I want you to search your feelings. You know this to be true. There's the current ecosystem. There's Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. Now imagine another ecosystem. Amazon AWS, Amazon Fulfillment, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, Google Search, Google Cloud, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger. 12 companies. Where is there more hiring? Where is there more power and diversity and shared revenues in the ecosystem? Where is there a broader tax base? Where is there less tax avoidance? So trust your feelings. You know this to be true. I don't think we break these guys up because they're evil. That's bullshit. They're no less or more evil than any of us. We don't break them up because they avoid taxes. We all try to avoid taxes. We don't break them up because they're job destroyers. We need job destroyers. That means innovators. We break them up because we're capitalists, and it's time. I appreciate your time, and I'll open it to questions. Thank you. Questions? Time for one or two. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Dave Berkowitz.
Hey, Dave.
How you doing?
Good. What do you do, David?
So I've got a marketing consultancy, serial marketer.
Great.
And the question I had for you was really the one you just glossed over and
Sure.
for split set. So which companies does Amazon become in this world of the breakup?
Which does it come be? Oh, how does it break up?
Yeah, what does that look like?
That's a difficult question. I would think it would be Amazon, AWS, the retail company, AWS, and then Amazon Fulfillment. Right now what we have, if the railroads, say you own the largest railroad and 50% of all rail traffic is on your rails, and you know exactly what is being shipped on those rails and where it's going. So you can begin to say, wow, jackets are selling a lot in El Paso. I know, let's open a jacket store, because we can do that. So if you're going to be responsible for 50% of all commerce flows and you get to see everything, I think it's an unfair advantage when you start competing with the end retailers. And I think that's where we are with Amazon. So I think we've got to take the rails and say, okay, you're in the business of rails, or you're in the business of retail, or you're in the business of cloud. What Amazon's doing right now with AWS is AWS, more power to them, amazing company, is one of the most profitable companies in tech right now. They take those profits and they subsidize their retail platform. I think if you properly accounted for the cost to get you your Nespresso pods within 24 hours or 48 hours, and the cost to produce the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and the cost to store your photos, and the cost that they're actually getting back in terms of what they charge you for those Nespresso pods, I think that you are getting $1 worth of Nespresso pods for 98 cents. And the marketplace loves it because they just continue to grow. When the Chinese wanted to kind of roll up the steel market by putting steel into the US market for less than cost, we called it dumping. But when Amazon sells stuff for less than cost, subsidizing it with AWS in order to roll up and consolidate the retail market, we call it innovation. So AWS, Amazon Retail Platform, and Amazon Fulfillment is how I would break it up. Last question, please introduce yourself. Yeah?
Yes. My question, though, is about what do you think about the investment in healthcare that Amazon is doing with Warren Buffett? Where do you see that going?
Yeah. Well, the question is we don't know because there's no detail. And it's an interesting example, though, of why we need to break up Amazon and why it's become too powerful. So what you're referring to is Amazon puts out a press release with JP Morgan and Berkshire Hathaway saying, we're going to look at healthcare costs. No detail on what that means. Are they giving their part? Well, yeah, okay, they've hired a doctor. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Do you know what they're doing? Oh, you know. What are they doing?
I'm asking you for what you think they are doing.
honest answer is, like everyone else, I have no idea. I don't know if it means they're going to have Equinox memberships to their employees, or if they're building a hospital or starting an insurance network. You can see that with their purchase data, they could say, as part of Amazon Prime, we have something called Amazon Prime Plus, and we're going to cherry pick the youngest households who order organic food and Lululemon, which means they work out, and don't order tobacco, and don't order trans fats, and we're going to offer them health insurance. And we're going to start putting all health insurance companies out of business. Maybe a good thing, maybe not. We don't know what it means, but it meant one thing. It was like the US going into Southeast Asia in the 60s. We didn't know if we were going to win, but we knew we were going to drop a lot of napalm. When Amazon announces they're going to healthcare, we don't know what it means, but on the opening bell of the next market, healthcare sheds $31 billion in value. Amazon buys an online pharmacy, a company called PillPack, $100 million in revenue. Offline pharmacies lose $11 billion in value. So they can now do Jedi mind tricks. This company can now start to choke another company without even laying its hands on it, without even touching it. So when one company can put their foot on the windpipe of the mother's milk of business, which is capital, it means they've become too powerful. The key to competitive markets is no one company can kill small companies in the crib by just looking at it, or prematurely euthanize big companies, which tend to be better employers and better taxpayers. So I think healthcare, I have no idea, but I do believe it's a great example of why we need to break these guys up. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for your time.